Smoke and steel filled the air over Detroit. The year was 1942, and the city's factories had transformed into a colossal engine of war. Rivets hissed, presses thudded, and the steady rhythm of machinery echoed across miles of assembly lines. Inside, workers, men and women alike, moved with uncanny precision, crafting the planes that would soon dominate the skies. 300,000 aircraft in just 3 years. A number that staggered even the Axis High Command. Observers from Washington and New York marveled. But the news that reached Tokyo and Berlin provoked disbelief. How could a single city produce so many machines of war? Assembly lines stretched endlessly, a human and mechanical ballet orchestrated to perfection. Engineers checked calculations, riveters tightened bolts, inspectors scrutinized every detail. Each plane leaving the factory was a testament to discipline, ingenuity, and relentless effort. Amid the clatter, human stories unfolded. Young women operating presses with blistered hands. Veterans of industry training new recruits under the pressure of deadlines that could mean life or death in distant skies. Telegrams from factories reporting daily output. Leaders measuring progress, calculating how many planes would reach overseas airfields tomorrow. Every action mattered. Every plane carried both hope and destruction. Axis commanders could scarcely fathom it. Intelligence reports intercepted and analyzed detailed a production rate that seemed impossible. Entire squadrons of aircraft materializing from factories ready to alter the balance of power. Disbelief turned to panic as planners realized the scale Detroit was no longer just a city. It was a war engine, relentless, unstoppable. Even amidst numbers and machinery, the human element persisted. Stories of camaraderie, exhaustion, innovation, and quiet heroism threaded through the industrial expanse. Workers moving with purpose despite fatigue, navigating miles of conveyor belts and scaffolding, coordinating with engineers, supervisors, and military liaisons. The assembly line was a battlefield of a different kind, and every life mattered. By the end of the day, thousands of aircraft had moved closer to completion. The hum of machinery, the clang of metal, the shuffle of countless boots echoed like a pulse across the city. Detroit was alive with the rhythm of war, and the Axis powers watching from afar could only marvel and tremble at the scale, speed, and precision of this industrial miracle. Detroit in 1942 had become the beating heart of American wartime industry. The city's factories previously devoted to automobiles and consumer goods had been transformed almost overnight into colossal aircraft assembly lines. Steel beams stretched like veins across massive halls. Conveyors carried fuselages down the length of the factory, and the rhythmic hammering of presses and riveting guns echoed endlessly. Every sound a reminder that this was no ordinary city, it was the arsenal of democracy. The workforce reflected the urgency of the hour. Men drafted from local industries, veterans returning from military service, and women stepping into roles once considered impossible for them. All trained, quickly moving in precise choreography along the assembly lines. Supervisors monitored speed, precision, and quality, ensuring that every rivet, every wing panel, every engine was perfectly installed. The production targets were staggering, hundreds of planes each week, and failure was not an option. Detroit's geography and infrastructure shaped the industrial effort. Sprawling factory complexes lined the river rail lines, threaded through the city, and roads were clogged with trucks transporting raw materials. Electricity hummed through the power grids, lighting the massive halls, keeping presses and lathes in motion. Even the weather played a role. Winter snow slowed deliveries. Summer heat tested endurance, and every shift required careful management of human energy and mechanical reliability. The war effort demanded coordination at unprecedented scales. Engineers, foremen, supply officers, and military liaisons worked together to orchestrate an operation that spanned city blocks. Parts had to arrive precisely when needed, assemblies completed on schedule, and quality inspections maintained. Mistakes could delay deployment and cost lives overseas. Maps of production floors were constantly updated, documenting each station, every worker's task, every completed fuselage. Even within the factories, the human element shaped success. Veterans trained new recruits, sharing tricks of the trade and maintaining morale under relentless pressure. Cafeteria lines, breaks, and shared moments of camaraderie became essential to sustaining focus. Telegrams arrived daily from Washington, and military planners updating quotas and shifting priorities. Every worker, every action became part of a complex system that extended from Detroit to the skies over Europe and the Pacific. The scale of production stunned even Americans. Thousands of rivets, engines, wings, and fuselages moved daily through hundreds of coordinated stations. Machinery operated at the limits of design, conveyor belts groaning under the weight of metal presses and riveters humming in unison. Supervisors timed operations like military maneuvers, ensuring a continuous flow of aircraft ready to leave the factory for assembly depots, transport ships, and airfields. Meanwhile, Axis intelligence struggled to comprehend the scope. Reports filtered back about the sheer volume of output, the speed of production, and the efficiency of the workforce. What appeared impossible to their planners was routine. In Detroit, hundreds of planes completed weekly, thousands of skilled workers moving as one organism toward a single goal. Detroit had become a city where industry and war were inseparable. By mid-1943, the city's factories had become a spectacle of human and mechanical coordination. Floors packed with machinery and men's scaffolds towering above fuselages, cranes lifting wings into place, workers moving in precise patterns. Each completed aircraft was a triumph of engineering and human perseverance, a tangible product of strategy, innovation, and relentless effort. The city itself seemed to pulse with the rhythm of war, each rivet a heartbeat, each engine a drumbeat of resolve. The context of Detroit's industrial power illustrates not only the capacity of human labor and ingenuity, but also the orchestration required to sustain a wartime economy. The convergence of technology, manpower, logistics, and sheer determination created a system capable of producing 300,000 aircraft in just 3 years. This was not just manufacturing. It was a battlefield of a different kind where human effort, precision, and strategy met the urgent demands of a global conflict. The scale of Detroit's production effort was staggering. By 1945, over 300,000 aircraft had rolled off the assembly lines, a feat that defied imagination. Fighter planes, bombers, and transport aircraft, each meticulously assembled, were dispatched to every theater of war. Production records show that at peak, some factories completed hundreds of aircraft per month, with output often exceeding projections. Inspectors and supervisors maintained a relentless pace, documenting each component, every rivet, every engine test. Inside the factories, the workflow resembled a military operation. Fuselages moved along tracks, while teams of workers installed wings, engines, and avionics. Presses and riveting machines operated in precise synchronization. Quality control was rigorous. Each aircraft had to meet strict specifications before leaving the line. Failures were rare, but corrective measures were immediate. Telegrams and memos from Washington reinforced the importance of precision, for every plane counted in the global conflict. Human effort was the linchpin. Over 100,000 men and women worked across Detroit's factories, often in grueling conditions. Shifts extended for hours, fatigue tested endurance, yet morale remained high through camaraderie, patriotic duty, and recognition of the stakes. Personal diaries describe blistered hands, sweat-soaked uniforms, and the exhilaration of watching an aircraft take shape under their hands. One assembly line worker wrote, "Every plane we finish today flies tomorrow, carrying freedom to distant skies." It's exhausting, yet worth every ounce of effort. The factories operated under tight coordination with supply chains. Raw materials, steel, aluminum, rubber, and electrical components arrived on time through rail and truck networks. Delays could halt production and ripple through the system. Engineers, foremen, and military liaisons constantly monitored flow, adjusting personnel, and resources to keep lines moving. Maps, charts, and diagrams documented every station, every team, every completed fuselage. Production data reveals the sheer magnitude of output. B-24 Liberators, PT-51. Mustangs and C-47 transports filled hangars daily. Statistical records from the era indicate that some factories produced more than 1,000 aircraft in a single month, a number that confounded Axis intelligence. Intercepted reports from Germany and Japan describe astonishment at the speed scale and quality of American manufacturing, calling it unprecedented and beyond belief. The human dimension merged with technological precision. Riveting teams, engine specialists, electricians, and inspectors moved in concert like a well-rehearsed orchestra. Each aircraft required hundreds of hours of labor and thousands of coordinated actions. Failures were not just technical, they carried human consequences, for every plane delayed meant fewer assets reaching front lines. Diaries from foremen capture this pressure. We are racing against time, against war, against death. Every rivet, every bolt, every engine must be perfect. Even in the midst of war, small innovations enhanced efficiency. Assembly jigs, standardized parts, and mechanized lifts reduced manual labor while increasing throughput. Lessons learned on one line were quickly applied across multiple factories. The system evolved, constantly adapting to shortages, bottlenecks, and the relentless demand for aircraft. By the end of the campaign, the fact layer was undeniable. Detroit had produced hundreds of thousands of aircraft, exceeding even the most ambitious projections. The combination of human skill, industrial engineering, logistics, and oversight created a war machine of a different kind, one that reshaped the air war and left Axis planners stunned. The numbers alone tell part of the story, but the personal accounts, diaries, and photographs reveal the extraordinary effort, coordination, and courage behind every plane. Whispers traveled quickly through the factory floors of Detroit. Tales of nearly supernatural efficiency spread among workers, supervisors, and visiting military officials. It was said that entire squadrons of aircraft seemed to materialize overnight, each plane emerging from the assembly lines as if by magic. Veterans recalled the hum of machinery as a living pulse, almost as if the city itself was producing life. Stories grew beyond the factories. Letters from soldiers overseas described arriving aircraft in numbers that seemed impossible, planes appearing faster than units could deploy them. Axis intelligence reports noted the relentless pace and precision of production, often attributing it to industrial miracles, a level of output that defied their understanding. The term Detroit Miracle began circulating quietly among Allied circles, a mix of admiration, awe, and disbelief. Even within the factory's folklore shaped morale. Workers shared stories of machines that seemed to anticipate human error, of presses that never jammed, of assembly jigs that aligned parts perfectly without supervision. Some whispered of ghost teams, groups of workers moving in near-perfect harmony, their efforts so coordinated it seemed preordained. These tales fueled determination, inspiring new recruits and veterans alike to match the almost mythical standard of productivity. The Axis commanders reading intercepted reports grew increasingly unsettled. They spoke of American factories as if they were fortresses, invulnerable and relentless. Reports described hundreds of aircraft completed daily, each more advanced and reliable than the last. Rumor and fact intertwined, giving rise to legends that Americans were producing planes at an almost supernatural rate, an industrial force that could not be stopped. Even small incidents became mythic. A crane operator lifted a fuselage with such precision that it avoided collision with nearby planes, earning him a reputation as a miracle worker among his peers. A riveter completed a section of a wing faster than anyone thought possible, and stories spread of her speed being unmatched, as if guided by fate. These tales repeated over coffee breaks, and shifts became part of the folklore of Detroit's factories. The combination of fact and legend created an aura. Outsiders describe Detroit as a city where machines and men moved in perfect synchrony, producing aircraft that would change the course of the war. Veterans later recounted that the sheer scale and speed of production seemed otherworldly, a phenomenon that inspired pride, awe, and occasionally disbelief among those who witnessed it firsthand. By the end of the war, the folklore had cemented itself. The numbers 300,000 aircraft were staggering enough, but the stories of human skill, relentless dedication, and seemingly impossible coordination elevated the achievement to legend. Detroit became more than a factory city. It was a symbol, a mythic force whose impact reached the skies above Europe and the Pacific, shaping both strategy and perception in ways that mere numbers could never fully convey. The true marvel of Detroit's wartime output lay in the intricate system that orchestrated every action across miles of factory floors. Assembly lines stretched like arteries, each station meticulously calibrated. Fuselages, wings, engines, and avionics moved in precise synchrony. Workers, engineers, and inspectors operated as a single organism, each aware of their role in the greater flow. The system transformed individual effort into a collective force capable of achieving the unimaginable. Observation and coordination were constant. Supervisors tracked progress using charts, telegrams, and daily reports. Production schedules dictated the pace of every rivet hammered, every wing panel aligned, every engine mounted. Deviations were corrected immediately, ensuring that output never faltered. Communication between floors, departments, and supply chains functioned like a nervous system, transmitting adjustments and directives instantaneously. Logistics formed the backbone of this industrial organism. Raw materials, aluminum, steel, rubber, wiring, arrived precisely when needed, transported by rail and truck through a network designed for efficiency. Any delay could ripple through the assembly process, threatening both output and morale. Engineers and supply officers constantly recalculated priorities, shifting personnel and resources to maintain the relentless tempo. The human element was seamlessly integrated. Workers rotated shifts to prevent exhaustion, teams trained together to ensure perfect coordination, and foremen monitored both speed and quality. Even small innovations, a new jig, a mechanized lift, a revised tool could dramatically improve workflow. Every improvement, every adjustment reinforced the precision and efficiency that had become legendary. The architecture of the factories themselves enhanced the system. Vast open floors allowed uninterrupted movement of fuselages. Cranes and scaffolding provided access to every plane, and lighting highlighted every workspace. The physical layout was as much a part of the system as the people and machines, enabling a continuous rhythm of production. Coordination extended beyond the factories. Completed aircraft were moved to staging areas, prepared for transport to ports, and shipped overseas. Military liaisons ensured that production met operational needs, prioritizing specific models for the European or Pacific theaters. The feedback loop between the front lines and the factories created a dynamic system of demand and response, one that sustained the war effort at an unprecedented scale. Psychological and cultural factors were integrated into the system as well. Stories of speed, precision, and near supernatural efficiency motivated workers. The folklore of Detroit's miracle output became part of training and morale, encouraging personnel to meet the extraordinary expectations set before them. Pride, duty, and shared purpose became forces as powerful as the machinery itself. By the height of production, the system had proven nearly flawless. Lines flowed continuously. Aircraft moved from raw materials to final assembly with remarkable efficiency, and the human workforce functioned in concert with mechanized aids. Detroit had become a living, breathing war engine capable of sustaining output levels that astonished both Allies and Axis observers. The orchestration of labor, logistics, and technology demonstrated that industrial systems could rival any battlefield strategy in shaping the course of war. By mid-1944, the industrial pulse of Detroit had reached a crescendo. Assembly lines churned endlessly, hundreds of aircraft taking shape simultaneously, Engines tested fuselages, riveted wings mounted with precise synchronization. The roar of presses, the hiss of pneumatic tools, and the shuffle of boots across factory floors created a rhythm almost musical in its intensity. Axis Intelligence reports intercepted and analyzed described the output in disbelief. 300,000 aircraft in just 3 years. Squadrons that should have taken months to assemble were now being completed weekly. Commanders in Berlin and Tokyo struggled to comprehend how a single city could overwhelm their calculations. Panic and awe intertwined as reports reached high command. Inside the factories, workers felt the weight of history in every motion. Riveters hammered in unison, engineers adjusted jigs with meticulous care, and inspectors moved swiftly down lines of aircraft, confirming tolerances to fractions of an inch. Every plane leaving the factory was more than metal and wire. It was a symbol of national resolve, a weapon that would dominate distant skies, and a testament to human endurance. The sheer scale of the operation created extraordinary moments of coordination and heroism. A crane operator maneuvered massive fuselages with surgical precision, avoiding collisions that could halt production. A team of engineers adapted an engine assembly process, on-the-fly cutting hours from the schedule and ensuring output targets were met. These small but critical actions magnified the overall impact of the industrial effort. Across the Atlantic and Pacific, the consequences were felt immediately. Newly assembled aircraft reached airfields faster than anticipated squadrons deployed to fronts in Europe and the Pacific, altering tactical planning and forcing Axis commanders to revise their strategies. Every intercepted report heightened their concern. Every delay in enemy countermeasures underscored the speed and efficiency of American industrial power. The psychological effect was profound. Axis planners described a sense of inevitability, a growing recognition that no matter the losses or tactical maneuvers, the production capacity of Detroit could replenish and exceed any damage inflicted. In the factories, workers sensed the weight of expectation motivated by the knowledge that their labor directly influenced the course of war. By late 1944, the climax of Detroit's industrial might was undeniable. Production lines moved with unrelenting momentum. Aircraft rolled off the floors in staggering numbers, and the world watched as the United States reshaped aerial warfare through sheer organizational precision and human perseverance. The factory floors were alive with purpose, energy, and a sense of mission. And Axis commanders watching the reports could only tremble at the scale, speed, and efficiency of a single city transformed into the engine of victory. Every rivet hammered, every wing mounted, every engine tested, contributed to a crescendo that defined the industrial war effort. Detroit had become both battlefield and arsenal, a theater where human skill, technological innovation, and relentless coordination reached their peak. The climax was not merely a measure of numbers, but of human will expressed through machinery, labor, and strategy. The city itself had become a weapon unstoppable, awe-inspiring, and decisive. As the smoke and clang of machinery settled for the evening, the scale of Detroit's achievement became tangible. The floors of factories, still humming faintly, were lined with completed aircraft ready for deployment. Warehouses brimming with engines, wings, and fuselages bore witness to months and years of relentless labor. The sheer volume of output was staggering. Hundreds of planes were shipped weekly, reinforcing air forces across multiple theaters of war. For the workers, there was both exhaustion and pride. Hands blistered, bodies aching from long shifts, yet spirits buoyed by the knowledge that every aircraft leaving the factory could alter the course of battle. Letters and diaries reveal quiet moments of reflection. We built machines that flew into war. Every rivet, every wing carried hope, fear, and determination. We made history one plane at a time. Axis Intelligence struggled to process the reality. Reports of Detroit's output reached Berlin and Tokyo, causing both disbelief and strategic recalibration. Entire aerial campaigns had to be reconsidered in light of the inexhaustible supply of aircraft. Planners realized that no matter how many planes they destroyed, the factories of Detroit would replace them, often before any tactical advantage could be gained. Panic mingled with awe as the implications became clear. The impact on the Allied war effort was immediate and profound. Squadrons deployed faster than anticipated air superiority shifted in critical battles, and logistical support networks adjusted to handle the unprecedented influx of aircraft. The coordination between production transport and frontline deployment exemplified a level of industrial warfare that was unprecedented. Detroit's factories had become as decisive as any battlefield engagement. Even the landscape of the factories bore witness. Scaffolding and cranes stood as silent monuments, floors polished and scarred from the movement of metal. Each rivet and panel a testament to human ingenuity and endurance. Supervisors, engineers, and workers alike understood the stakes failure or delay could ripple across thousands of miles and countless lives. The aftermath was measured not just in numbers, but in the human spirit that sustained the relentless pace. Folklore and legend persisted alongside the facts. Tales of miraculous output of assembly lines operating flawlessly under impossible pressure circulated among workers and military observers alike. These stories reinforced morale, strengthened pride, and turned the industrial effort into a shared narrative of heroism. Detroit was remembered not only as a city of production, but as a symbol of ingenuity, determination, and the indomitable will to win. By the end of the war, the results were undeniable. 300,000 aircraft had been built, a figure that reshaped both strategy and perception. Axis planners remained awed and unsettled, having witnessed the unparalleled industrial capability of a single city. For the Allies, the factories of Detroit stood as proof that human coordination, technical skill, and unyielding perseverance could tip the scales of global conflict. The aftermath extended beyond mere numbers. It left a legacy of innovation, labor, solidarity, and strategic insight. Workers, veterans, and historians alike would look back on Detroit's production as a defining element of the Allied victory. The echoes of hammers, presses, and rivets remained in memory, a testament to the extraordinary human effort that powered the skies of World War II. The factory floors of Detroit fell silent as the final shift ended. The hum of machinery faded, leaving only the echoes of countless rivets, hammered engines tested, and fuselages completed. Rows upon rows of aircraft stood ready, awaiting deployment to distant skies, to battles that would decide the fate of nations. Workers stepped back exhausted, yet proud. Each plane leaving the factory carried a piece of their labor, their determination, and their courage. Letters and diaries preserved the memories of those long hours. The camaraderie, the sweat, and the relentless rhythm of production that had become a lifeline in the war. Across the Atlantic and Pacific axis, commanders could only watch in disbelief. The sheer scale of Detroit's output had altered strategy, disrupted calculations, and reshaped expectations. Reports of thousands of aircraft rolling off the lines with uncanny speed became legendary, inspiring both fear and awe among enemy planners. The city itself seemed to breathe with the memory of effort and ingenuity. Scaffolding and cranes stood like monuments, floors scarred from relentless work walls, echoing the heartbeat of a nation mobilized. And in the quiet stories persisted. Tales of miraculous production, of human coordination so precise it seemed preordained. Fact and folklore entwined, immortalizing Detroit as the arsenal of democracy. And yet, one question lingers. How many acts of ingenuity, courage, and perseverance remain hidden in the noise of history? How many stories of ordinary workers shaping extraordinary outcomes go untold, waiting to be remembered, to be witnessed again? You have just seen another chapter in the hidden chronicles of World War II. The story of industrial might, human ingenuity, and relentless determination that stunned Axis commanders and reshaped the air war. If you want to continue exploring untold stories of courage, innovation, and strategy that changed the course of history, subscribe and follow. The echoes of these factories, these people, and these machines are never truly gone. The presses fall silent. The engines wait. But memory endures. Detroit's contribution, its extraordinary output, and the human will behind every plane remain etched into history, always waiting for the next telling.